had to really put aside my perfectionism and say it doesn't matter, because there are things I'm playing tonight that are a literal stretch for my right hand, and that are that I can't reach yet, that I have to leave out some notes. Sometimes I have to play other notes accidentally. I have to change a lot of fingering, what I call adaptive piano. I have to readjust things. I was telling somebody the other day, I've never played so many notes with my thumb. There are times I play 3 notes with my thumb. I'd never done that before. So there's a lot of adaptive piano going on. Not so much in the Scarlatti, but some in the Haydn and a lot in the Chopin. So I'm starting with Scarlatti, and I put in the program notes the dates of the composers and where they're from. So Domenico Scarlatti is Italian. So he's born in 1685. There was something in the water in 1685. That was the same year J.S. Bach was born. It was the same year Vivaldi was born, and Scarlatti, the 3 of the most famous composers from that period. But the other famous composers were from Germany, and Domenico Scarlatti was Italian. And I am going to be talking tonight about Sonata Form, but it didn't happen yet. That really came along in the time of Haydn and Mozart, so I'll be going into that in the Haydn. So in Scarlatti, it's very, very simple sonata form. He wrote hundreds and hundreds of sonatas. They're basically just A-B form. And A section, it repeats, and the B section repeats. They're short, and I'm just doing one of them. The K stands for Kirkpatrick, which is just a man who, after Scarlatti's death, put all of his hundreds and hundreds, I think like 800 sonatas, paired them up so each A major has another pair, and it's just how he thought they worked together. So that's all that means. And so Scarlatti, it's Baroque. I love listening to this in the morning because it's like refreshing. It clears out my brain. It's lots of trills and ornaments, and decoration that's really meant to be very ornate decoration, very much like the Baroque art of the same time. So a very short opening of the Scarlatti Sonata in E major. Thank you. And we're doing floating hearts instead of applause. So if you enjoy that, love to see some floating hearts. And I am going to be totally transparent that I blanked for a moment and I don't remember whether I repeated that B section or not. So anyhow, there you have it. That happens sometimes. I don't think I did, and if I didn't, you can listen again. Thanks for the floating hearts. What I'd love to know from you also is, I want to get into the emotions of music as I talk about sonata form and as it progressed through the different time periods. Thanks for the hearts. Can you post in a comment any emotions that you felt when you were listening to that? There's no wrong answer, there's no right answer, you don't have to match anybody else. And emotions are funny. You might listen to it now and feel one emotion. You might listen to it tomorrow and feel a different emotion. So if you could tell me just any one word or two words that comes up of anything that you were feeling while you were listening to that. And unfortunately my computer's a little behind, so I'm just gonna look up here. And crisp and pretty, thank you, thanks. So I'm gonna talk for a minute and then I'm gonna look at your emotions. So I'm gonna ask you to do that during the night because there's a real progression where if you saw in the years when I wrote the composers, Scarlatti was born in 1685 and lived till what was the year? Till 1732, and then Haydn was born in 1732 and lived a very long life up until 1809. So happiness, great, crisp and pretty, bright morning birds. Those trills are like morning birds, terrific. Felt light and carefree. I equate it sometimes to like a glass of really crisp white wine paired with like grapefruit, something just very cleansing and clear and bright and carefree. I love it. So any other emotions, feel free to write in there. So that was the very short Scarlatti sonata. Now I'm going to go into sonata form. So if you could tell me, if you've been on my mailing list, you've probably seen a video that I sent out when you sign up for my email list that is an introduction to first movement sonata form. If you have seen that and it's on an early Beethoven sonata, could you just put yes, sonata, yes, I saw sonata form, or even just put if you know a little bit about sonata form. I'd love to know that. Looking at your comments here, and because I'm going to be, and hearts, that works too, fantastic. So I did an example with an early Beethoven sonata, which also works for this piece. So Haydn and Mozart really developed sonata form. Elizabeth knows about sonata form. She's seen my videos, and buoyant, that's a good word too also. Some other people that know about sonata form, fantastic. A sonatina is just a sonatina is a miniature sonata, exactly, Eric. So it's a condensed form of this. And Patricia and Ruth are both familiar with sonata form, fantastic. So I'm going to be going into this in Haydn. And I'm going to keep this to complete minimal cliff notes on this, and I'm actually working on putting a class online called Demystifying Classical Music where I'll go into this more. And what basically happens, and this is the total cliff notes, is in sonata form there's three main sections. There's the exposition, which exposes the two themes, and I'll play those for you in a second. They're usually contrasts from each other, not so much in this Haydn. And then the development develops those themes, and then the recapitulation restates those themes. And there's a ton of theory that goes behind this that I'm not going to go into, that goes into the all of the rules of what happens during all those, the tonic or the dominant. I am in Half Moon Bay Distillery where they distill gin, and so when I talk about tonic, I'm not talking about gin and tonic. I'm talking about if we're in the key of D major, that D is the tonic, and A, the fifth degree of D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A is the dominant. Those are the basic, rules for where you place which theme. So the first theme in this first movement is, it's very fun, it's very lively, and pay attention to your emotions. That's in D major, that's in the tonic. The second theme of the exposition is in the dominant, so now we're in A major. Again, this is just the total cliff notes. And that exposition repeats, and I will remember tonight to repeat that. I won't blank out. Then the development happens where those themes get on top of each other. Listen for those themes, and they get on top of each other, and you go through the most transition harmonically, kind of as I'm going to read something to you as I was reading about this. I timed this. This will take me 20 seconds. I'm going to read this in 2 breaths. And this is how other people describe this about the development. Commences with material first subject and dominant key, A major, passing through B minor, A major, D major, bar 46, in which key new material is introduced at bar 47, returning to relative minor, B minor, bar 51, in which key it leads to E minor, bar 59, by means of Neapolitan 6, bar 55, and chord of the supertonic chromatic 7th and tonic chord of B minor, bars 56 to 57. The chord of the dominant 7th of B minor 58 becomes supertonic chromatic 7th of E minor, resolving upon dominant 7th chord of E minor onto tonic chord, bar 59. Development section ends with the chord of the dominant 7th of D major. I don't think you need to know that to enjoy this. I don't even completely understand that. I do, but I don't think that way. So I just want you to enjoy it, and I'm here to demystify that. That is in all the music, but you don't need to know that to enjoy that. And sometimes it helps to not know that, sometimes to even enjoy it more. But that is what's happening in the development. Then it comes, but listen for the recapitulation. When it comes back, you'll hear just like the beginning. Just like the beginning. The slow movement is very short. It's a sostenuto. It's very slow, and it's binary, means A-B form, and it repeats, and it's just gorgeous. The third movement is not a typical rondo movement. It's short sections that keep repeating, and lots of theory happens, and I won't go into that. But the other thing I want to tell you about Haydn, which is he was a very fun and funny composer. So if you can post a thumbs up or a heart if you've ever been to a symphony, almost always when a symphony is doing their final performance before a conductor leaves his tenure, which is just so sad that Michael Tilson Thomas, who conducts San Francisco Symphony, he's leaving his 25th year this season without a live concert, but they're doing great other things online. But I transgress. So Haydn very oftentimes, symphonies very oftentimes do the Haydn farewell symphony as the conductor is leaving his tenure. The reason why is because Haydn wrote this. He was working at the Esterházy estate for years, for like 25 plus years, with a lot of the same musicians. And they needed a vacation. They hadn't had one in, I think, 12 years or something like that. And he wanted to get a message across to King Esterházy that they needed a vacation. So he wrote it into the symphony. He wrote the farewell symphony, and each instrumentalist, one by one, at the end of the last moment, walks off stage and leaves with a wind player. I think it's a clarinet or an oboe player playing the melody. And the king got the message, and they got a vacation. The other thing he did a lot of humor in his music. The other thing he did, he was so tired of they'd have these elaborate dinners in the palace, and then everyone would fall asleep during the slow moments. He wrote his famous surprise symphony. It's all very slow, soft, pianissimo chords, and then comes in with this most surprising, fortissimo, loud, banging chord at the most unexpected moment. That was just very typical Haydn humor, and I think you'll hear some of that in the D major sonata. So I want you to pay attention to your emotions and write either while I'm playing or afterwards in a comment what emotions you're feeling while you listen to this. And this is all 3 movements of the Haydn D major. Hoboken just means, again, it's just a man who came along and put Haydn sonatas in chronological order. This was with a group of the 16. He wrote a lot of piano sonatas, and this is the order that they were in, they were written. think it's not quite used to not standing. I'm used to, like, if I stand up, I see my head gets cut off. So thank you, for the applause in the form of floating hearts. And I would love to know what, thanks for the hearts and the thumbs up. I'd love to know what emotions you felt during this. This is, right at the very end, I felt like he uses his humor when you have that big pause, when it just has the A's. It's like, where is it going? And then, oh yeah. And it goes back to the theme. So he just uses humor all over the place and cheerful, fun, great. Some more people joining in, fantastic. It's lively. Hopefully it brighten your mood. Mozart too, but Haydn is just like, if I just want to cheer myself up, Haydn's a good composer to listen to as well as to perform. And lots of fun, fantastic, great. So, moving on to Chopin. So, who was here? It was about a month ago I did an all Chopin program. I know many of you were here for that, and I played some lighter pieces. I played some preludes, the Raindrop Prelude. I played a nocturne. I played some etudes, some studies. I played a scherzo, and I played a Polonaise fantasy. And it was a big program for my right hand, and then I needed to rest it for a while. So that's when I decided, I love Chopin. I love probably my favorite composer to perform. And I decided, I don't have to do all of these big works. It was fine for my right hand, but I had to really rest it afterwards. So I decided, okay, so why don't I do a program based around sonatas and do some education and do one movement of a sonata. So this is the Chopin Sonata, which a month ago I tried and my right hand couldn't handle. This is very challenging for my right hand. This is a piece I've been playing since I was in my early 20s. It's one of my top 3 favorite Chopin works, probably my others being the Polonaise Fantasy and the E minor Concerto. And this work is it's just a brilliant work. So I'm going to talk through a few themes and what to listen for. And in the description I put, it says grave, which means very, very slow, which is only for 4 bars, and doppio movimento just means twice the speed of the grave. And Chopin is very famous for taking the most dissonant sound you can take in the piano, the minor second. It's a very dissonant sound as opposed to a consonant sound. And taking that dissonant sound and making it into the most beautiful thing, most beautiful melodies, so much all over the place. In the other movement of the sonata, he takes that minor second and major seconds, those major seconds and minor, and makes them so gorgeous, and then inverts them, and we'll talk about that later. But he creates such beauty out of such dissonance, and that's one of the things I just love about his writing. So in this work, he creates a lot of tension. When I was originally studying this with Lillian Clear, I went to a lesson. I'd probably been working on it 3 or 4 weeks, and I said, Miss Clear, I'm just not getting this. It feels unsettled. It feels like I just can't land anyplace. And she goes, great, that means you're getting it. It's supposed to have that quality. It's a lot of agitation. He's on the offbeat all the time. He's accenting the offbeat. There's a lot of rests that are like hiccups. Like, where's it going? So he uses, when I talk about minor seconds and minor thirds, that's a minor third, and this is a minor second. He uses that to create tension until he does it and creates it into such beauty. So the other thing to really note, right at the beginning, the grave, only 4 bars, and they're so important. When you invert a minor third, instead of this way, it becomes a sixth. In this case, it's actually a seventh. And that is really important to listen to, because as he develops this agitation, it goes into a beautiful, we're in sonata form, so we have the exposition of that tension-filled theme contrasting with a long lyrical line that Chopin's so famous for. And really grows with that. When he comes into the development, it's just so brilliant writing. He takes that opening grave, which is just 4 measures, and takes this theme, puts it way in the bass. You're going to hear that by itself, which was, but now it's big. And he takes all of those themes and puts them together. So remember earlier I talked about the development being the most technically challenging part of the piece. It is not only the most technically challenging, this is really hard in my right hand because it requires me to play with the fingers that are the most compromised in terms of my stretch, to play fourths and fifths with those fingers, and I may play a few wrong notes, I will play a few wrong notes, I may leave out a few notes. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I do know my heart is in it, and I do know I am following my motto, which is screw perfect and make music, and I'm putting my heart first so that it connects with your heart, so no matter what notes I'm playing, that it opens your heart, which is the beauty that really lives in Chopin. So the first movement of the B flat minor, his second of 3 sonatas. Thank you. Oh, my hand is tired. But I did it. Thank you. Oh, man. It just is demanding. It just requires so much stretch and I'm working on it, and it's rewarding to be able to play. Thank you for the hearts. I talked about first movement, Sonata Form, the Exposition repeats. Thanks for all the hearts. I love it. I did not repeat it. I wasn't sure whether I was going to. I was worried I wouldn't be able to get through it if I repeated it. So I decided to make it a little easier on my hand and not do that. So, thank you. I love all the hearts and thumbs up and smiling faces. Thank you. Emotions. I'd love to know, like, that's, so we've now gone, we keep jumping 100 years from the Baroque period to of Scarlatti to what's called the classic period. We call everything classical. It's not all classical. That period of the 1700s, when Haydn and Mozart and early Beethoven was writing, is really classical, and into the early 1800s, and then Romantic is where Chopin is. And wondering what emotions you felt. It's good for your heart, not for your hand. It actually, Evelyn, it actually is good for my hand. So it's not like I'm hurting my hand by doing this. Aside from my emotional therapy being at the piano, my physical therapy is at the piano. When I don't play, I can't let myself not play for 2 days. Like I generally take Sundays off and that's it, because by Monday it's tight. So the more I use it, actually the better it is for my hand. So it's actually good for my hand. It's just demanding for my hand in ways that nothing else is. So it's actually good for it. So emotions you felt during that, I love the bravos. Majesty, that's a great word that describes this. I'd also love to know does this interest you when I combine the education with the performance? Would you like more of this? Would you be interested in a low-cost online class called Demystifying Classical Music? I'd love to see some comments on that. And so if you can post a comment on that, that would be great. And I'd also love to know, I'm thinking of keeping this format. So like this tonight was sonata, next week might be preludes, another night might be nocturnes. So I'm keeping that, I'm interested in doing that format, and I'm wondering what you think about that. And so feel free to post your comments either now or after. And also continuing this weekly. Should I go to, as we're lightening, as we're getting out a little more now and we're going into phase 2, shelter in place, do you still want this every week? I will tell you, it's going to be quite a while before we're going to be hearing concerts in person. I mean, there's so many modifications being made with seating and so forth. So I'd love to know, do you still want this to continue weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? I'd love to know your feedback on that. And great, so here's some, and I'm sure there's going to be some contrasting opinions, and I'll read through everything afterwards as well. So I would actually love to play an encore for you, which would be the third movement, not the whole thing, but the heavenly section of the third movement of this sonata, of the second Chopin sonata. So if you were started a few minutes late, so we've got a few minutes left, and if you'd like to hear that, if you can give me a thumbs up or a floating heart, that would be great. It's just one of my favorite themes that Chopin ever wrote. Weekly is good, okay. You like the stories about individual, I am no shortage of stories and individual pieces, it'd be great. So, okay, so I see lots of hearts coming in, great. And I will, for now, if I am really looking at, how do I incorporate different things with left hand, and I think it could work continuing weekly if I can go to this format of one, preludes, one night, nocturnes, and sonatas, because then it just helps me, it's not quite as demanding. and to come up with all this music too. Nocturnes 1 week, Preludes another. Great, thumbs up, fantastic. Okay, so this is just one of Chopin's most gorgeous, simple melodies. It's the middle section. So this is the Funeral March Sonata, but I'm not going to play the Funeral March. It's very heavy, it's very dark, and it's not, it's not the right time for that. I don't want you to subject you to that, although it's very beautiful. What I'm going to play instead is the middle section of the third movement. So instead of the Funeral March, I'm just going to take out the Ascension into Heaven. So this is where he takes those minor seconds and major seconds, makes them so beautiful, and then when you invert a major second, you have this, which he reaches for and then goes to a major second. And the whole section of that is that. So the heavenly section, the Ascension into Heaven of the Funeral March section of Chopin's B-flat minor sonata. Thank you for staying a little bit late, and thanks for the hearts for this encore. thank you. Now that mic is sensitive. Sorry for that. Thank you. It's one of my favorite things to play. I love it. It's so beautiful. Oh man. This is so rewarding for me to do this. I can't even tell you. This is like keeping my sanity through this shelter-in-place time. I've loved preparing these performances, these presentations, working on my writing, playing the piano, playing for you in your homes. There's nothing I'd rather be doing with my time, and I so appreciate you spending your time this way. Now, there's a million things you could be doing, and I so appreciate it. This is a totally free service. I will keep offering this free, and I'm also very appreciative of any tips that you can leave. There's a PayPal link in the description of the concert, and thanks for the beautiful comments. And there's a PayPal link.